diatribe, if you want to call it that, banter between myself and players concerning all things roleplay, all things games. Actually, I tend to also play video games, which, by the way, is why you'll see that extra little bar at the top of my screen right now for a charity that we're going to be involved with this weekend called Extra Life. If you haven't heard about it, players of all sorts of video games and console games and such will be playing their games for a charity. So for so many hours, they're dedicated to try to play all 24 hours of the session if they can, and if not, at least as many hours as they can. And then those that sponsor them for either a flat fee, which is normal, or some of them actually go with a percentage of how many hours a person's going to play or whatever. So if you notice, we're already at $125. That's because I had some very good associates start off right off the get-go and throw some money into that. I greatly appreciate that. So do the children's hospitals all across the country. We are in Southern California, so our specific hospital is the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. It's the closest one to us. And so that's where these funds will be going at the end of the event. The event will end Sunday night or Sunday morning, midnight into Sunday. So we're playing basically from Friday night all the way through nonstop. So you'll be seeing a lot of World of Tanks and a very blurry, very sleepy-eyed Game Master Guru probably by the end of it. Today, we're going to be talking about Origins. That's kind of like my theme for today, and that has to do with the fact that this is the inaugural episode of Making Believe. It's also the relaunch, if you will, of Nikos events on livestream. And it also is the beginning of a new relationship with organizations like we've got, for example, now we're streaming on live streaming on Facebook as well. So we're everywhere. We will eventually be completely ubiquitous. But until then, we're going to be talking today about Origins. Now, I've already got a couple of very good friends that are hanging out with me. You don't see them in the chat necessarily online, although they may be later to kind of help me moderate. But they are very good associates of mine, and they play games with me nonstop on our Discord, which you can find the link for down below. If you get really clever and you want to join us, you can do that as well. Right now I have Day, I have General Nuisance, and I have Fang Sister with me. So you guys want to say hello?
Hello.
Can't hear you.
Hello.
Okay, there's two of them.
Hello.
Day, are you hiding out on me now?
No, he's back.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you
Yeah.
now. There we go. Yay. Must have got your new headphones on, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to. Apparently, the battery died on them.
Yes, that happens a lot with the Corsairs. That's what you're currently sporting right there's a Corsair headset.
Yes.
Just doing some product placement, just some expeditionary, plumbing. I call it unsolicited endorsements. I'm not yet working as an affiliate for any of them, but any of them want to start throwing opportunities, I'm definitely available for that. I'm a bit mercenary when it comes to that kind of thing. So as for your benefit, Day, what we're going to be doing today is talking a little bit about Origins. So I might be asking you guys some questions about how you guys got started playing. I'll tell you a little bit about back in my day. Where's my radio? Where's my radio? Wrong button. Yeah, back in the day when this is what the radios sounded like, all crackly and sparkly. That's when things really got started. This is back in the days before computer games. I know. Can you believe it? There actually was a time when computer games weren't there.
There was?
There was.
Wow.
Well, the only games you got to play were board games,
Card games.
card games,
And sometimes
and
miniatures games if you were really lucky.
Puzzles,
Yeah, puzzles, which I call distance games because the designer of the puzzle is the only other person playing. But
I love puzzles.
excellent. So I'm going to start it off first by telling you a little bit about my start in games. I'm actually going to back up a little further than I normally do. I'm going to start way back when I was 4 years old. I was kind of a precocious kid, and we would often use our adventure time, our travel time. I dad didn't like to stay in one place a lot. We would travel to my relatives' house, my grandparents and my great grandparents and such. And what was fascinating is that when you live in a place like Kansas, Kansas, yes, I did say that it's a very flat space, but more importantly, when you go to visit people's houses, almost it's almost a statewide heritage, I suppose, to pull out a card table and start playing something almost immediately. Because if you think about it, you're traveling for, oh, 200, 300 miles to go visit somebody. When you get to their house, they're getting the same TV channels that you get. They have the same movies at all of the theaters that you have. They have the same restaurant chains that you have. So there's really not a lot of things to recommend going and doing other things. So when you go to the relative's house, you break out a board game, a card game, such like immediately. So here I am going to my grandfather's house when I was 4 years old. My sisters were both younger than me. So, of course, you don't want to play little children's games when you're as sophisticated as I was at 4. You know, you want to go and see what the adults are doing. Well, they played a game called cribbage. How many people in this room have played cribbage? I can't ask by raise of hands because I know one's got a camera.
Hands raised.
Hands.
I have.
Oh, you played cribbage? Awesome.
Yeah.
We are, you know what? We must be soulmates because it has been. I have not found anybody under Jean's age that plays cribbage. So
It's been a long time, but I have played it before.
excellent. Oh, you just made. Be still my heart. Then you threw me completely out of that. I thought for certain it was just going to be Jean and I talking about it for a moment or two. But if you've played cribbage, you know it's a math game. It's a lot of addition, a lot of remembering, watching numbers go by and doing the quick math to determine whether or not your card can play, that kind of thing. Well, as a 4-year-old, you wouldn't think somebody like that could play, but I looked over that table and I just, within minutes, felt like I knew how to play that game. Well, my grandfather would jokingly stand up from time to time and go do what men of certain age do at that time of life and spend a few minutes of consternation in another room of the house, and then they'd come back. Well, he always would drop the cards on the table and say, "You can play them if you can read them." Thinking that was clever, he did that. Well, after about 3 times of him doing that, I saw the cards laying there, so I picked them up and took over playing that hand for him. And I scored it exactly as he would have, according to my grandmother and my grandfather a little bit later. And so I was officially allowed to start playing at the age of 4 because I was able to already do the math.
Wow.
So from my childhood upward, games were integral to communication. I mean, you didn't go to a relative's house without playing games with them. It didn't happen. So imagine now when you push forward to, I'm going to push past my actual role play experience, but in my 20s, when I would go to somebody's house to visit or whatever, I'd expect to be, breaking out the card table. And there were people that would actually sit in their chairs with their arms folded and rocking back and forth and talking without any tabletop explanations going on. There wasn't any gameplay. It's like, what are we doing? Why are we? This is not communication to me. So I'm going to ask each of you quickly, what was the first experience you have that you remember playing either a card game or a board game? I'm going to go in, let's go, I'm going to be an ageist, and I'm going to go with Jean first, if you don't mind, Jean. Tell us when you first played a card game or board game and what your memories are. And then likewise, the other two of you, if you will, as well.
Sure. With my great uncle and great aunt around the family table on Sunday after dinner.
Just this last week, really?
More years ago than I care to remember.
More years, I would dare to say, than maybe I've been alive. Were you still in school at the time?
Yes, I was probably around 7-ish.
Okay.
And we had
What game were you playing? Do you remember?
Oh my God, you name it, we played it. Dr. Pepper, 10 twos and 4s.
King's
Wild.
Corners. Kings of the
Yeah.
Corners.
The other one, we played 7-card stud. We played 5-card draw.
They taught you gambling games? Oh my.
Absolutely,
Wow.
and we had the chips.
That's pretty funny.
They were penny chips,
Nice. Yeah, oh yeah.
10
right.
white for a penny.
Nice.
one of the fives for 5
Yeah.
pennies and a
Gotcha.
10 for 1 penny.
Gotcha.
Big spending.
Big spending, I'm sure. Now I will say that my grandfather loved, he didn't like to play cutthroat cribbage, but if you play cribbage, you know that normal cribbage rules are flat and everybody follows all the rules. But in cutthroat cribbage, you get to steal any points the other person leaves on the table. So if I count my hand and I miss a pair, you can steal the pair.
Ah.
Well, when my grandfather played cut, he would play for penny a point, and at the end of a week, he'd walk away with a $10 bill most of the time because he could read cards faster than anybody else on the table. So.
The oldest board game I remember was Parcheesi.
Ah, the game of Inja.
India. And later on, we had a Sorry board, but my first games were on the Parcheesi board.
Yes. And Sorry was a blatant example of companies stealing somebody else's idea and reproducing it. But that's another story for another. We can do an entire episode talking about numbers of thefts, borrows, and robberies in the games business. It's a sordid tale. But let's move on. Let's move on.
But true. Sordid but true.
Thanks. Why don't you tell us about your games experience? When was the first time you remember playing a game?
Oh boy. Mostly board games when I was growing up. So I guess the first board game, maybe Monopoly. I don't know. I
Okay.
really don't know,
Okay.
but it was
Okay.
one of the ones we liked to play a lot. That and what else was it? I guess really, really young was like Candyland or something.
Okay,
But
that's fair. That's fair. No, a lot of people don't realize the value of a game like Candyland. I always tell everybody if they play Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh or something like that, they should go and play some Candyland. And it sounds like I'm being demeaning or insulting, but the reality is that Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic are very much like Candyland. How could that possibly be? One's dice, the other one's cards. It's all about you win some, you lose some. The deck structures in even competitive decks can fall into a really bad mana short or mana overload or
yes.
whatever, and so you can still lose with a killer, structured deck. And so before you go and play competitive games where you could go off tilt because you lost, go play a game like Candyland, because exactly 50% of the time you'll win and 50% of the time you will lose, no matter what kind of great strategy you have, because it comes down to the dice rolls. That game is just pure random chance. So I always say, play a lot of tic-tac-toe, play a lot of cribbage. As you as a cribbage player know, you can be all kinds of stellar good at the game and win.
Still lose.
Yeah, but you can still have, the other guy can still pull 2 16s out of the hat, and you go, how did he get past me? Exactly. So I think that may be one of the reasons why I feel that the perfect game in terms of game elegance, perfect game is cribbage compared to every game I've ever played, because cribbage has absolutely even odds in terms of success fail on that, and therefore if there is skill, the skill is in the actual discard, and so there is a mechanism where you can actually be better than somebody else in terms of play, but still have an equal chance of losing, which I feel is kind of elemental in gameplay, because if we win every time, no one will play with us, right?
You don't have fun.
Right, because if one person's always winning, the other people won't play. That's maybe one of the reasons why Monopoly is to me such a horrid example of a board game. Not to insult those people that love it, because they love it for a very different reason from why I don't like it. I can't articulate it clearly enough, but my feelings about Monopoly are because a person with a sound strategy can actually win virtually every time, no matter how good the other player is, because their strategy can be unfailing. So. All right, Day, it's your turn. What was your first play experience? Tabletop board game, card game. What was your very first memories of that?
Yeah, it's Well, the first one I ever played was Dominoes. It's I
Okay,
used to.
standard dominoes, or did you play Mexican Train? Did you play double ups? What was your poison? Do you remember?
I don't remember because I was so young. My
Fair enough.
grandma used to take care of me, so we
Okay.
used to play it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's more than likely to be standard dominoes. That's usually played with a double six or a double nine set. You do normally don't go up to the crazy like double 15s and things like that. Do you remember what kind of
Yeah.
what the size of the set was? We're talking 60 dominoes or 150. You know.
No, it wasn't that many.
Yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
willing to bet it's probably a double six or maybe even a double nine because those were at the time those were of course I'm speaking 20 years ago, so that's my guess, 25, 30 years ago, something like that. But
I remember just sixes.
and do you remember how often did you win in playing with your grandmother?
I remember she let me win a lot, so I felt like I was the best in the world. Like no one could beat me.
Okay, great. This brings me to a real quick point. I love the fact that you said that. There's two things you said there at once. She let you win. Do you know that for certain, or were you just that good?
Uh, I was 4 at the time. I doubt I really understood the concept of dominoes.
Okay.
I just knew that it was numbers.
But you had the experience of winning often with somebody who you clearly thought was a better player.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a critical point, and this goes for anybody listening in reference to any game ever. If you are playing a game with new or developing players, learn this acronym, LTWW. If you can learn LTWW and apply it judiciously, you will make a gamer out of somebody who's never played before. And that, of course, stands for let the Wookiee win. Those of you that are Star Wars fans know exactly what I'm talking about. If at any time you have the skill to play and defeat an opponent, and you do so despite their rookiness, you actually are harming your own play opportunities. Because if a person playing the game doesn't get a chance to win and you're the one that taught them, the first thing they think is, I can't ever win this. You know? If I'm in the beginner's seat and he's sitting against me, I can't even figure it out well enough to beat him. Conversely, if they see you as an authority on that game because you're teaching them how to play, and somehow, miraculously, with 2 points to spare, they crush you, then if the Wookiee, if the new person wins, number one, they're going to want the game because they think they can play it. They think they're experts. Number two, they're going to want to play against you again because they think you to be somebody that's a pushover, which means later on you can turn on the juice and make it a fair game and enjoy yourself a little bit more. But my point is that playing to let the Wookiee win is not playing so that they see that you lost to them. So when I asked about your grandmother beating you, or your aunt, I think it's your grandmother.
Yeah.
If you feel that she let you win, how did that make you feel, or did you not know that? You're only saying that now because you look back.
Yeah, I mean, it's a memory I obviously cherish and will always cherish.
Well, no, I'm just clarifying that you didn't think at the time that she was letting you win, right?
No. I would
Right.
never have assumed that. Where's the logic in that?
Okay, no,
Unreasonable.
I'm telling you, I have. Okay, so in the time that I worked for Yu-Gi-Oh, and of course this is way into my play life. When I worked for Yu-Gi-Oh, one of the things I would do is I would go to the conventions and I would sit down anywhere near our booth, and I would just let kids come and play against a Konami rep because I'd have my Konami uniform on, so they knew that I worked for the company. I was never a competitive level player anyway, and I was letting 9 and 10-year-old kids play against me, right? Just brand new, just got their brand new deck and their hands are. It's so fun to watch those little ones with the little chubby hands trying to get their hand of cards all set up. And then, of course, they do all the things they see in the TV show. They lift the card with 2 fingers.
Yeah.
And they point it down. I have 2 of them came with the actual dual decks, the big arm things. and they were so
Oh.
heavy.
Oh
They
my
were so
God.
heavy they couldn't
Those
use
are
the
so
dual
cool.
deck, so they put the dual deck on the table in front of them and same
That's
thing. Showed you the
weird.
cards and pointed and put it. It was all the act for
Okay.
them, right? But when they would win, their eyes would just get so big, and you could just hear their parents' checkbooks going. I mean, their little counters going cha-ching, 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 because that kid's now going to go get. Mommy, I need 4 more boxes of this, and I need 2 of those, and I want to get 4 of those. Can I get those? Right? Because the kid now loves the game because he beat a guy who works for the company. Now, everybody that knew me were like, "What are you doing? You're playing a stall burn. Nobody plays that anymore." It's like, I happen to like a game where my guys stay on the field a little bit longer than yours. That's all. So the point being is that when you play a game, if you're trying to teach somebody LTWW, at least the very first game, if not the first series, or until somebody at the table says, "I got it." Because as soon as they say "I got it," then you have to let them know that they don't. And they can still beat you. They can
Yeah.
still beat you, but the thing is that they need to know that there is more ratchet to it than they think. So, but yeah, my record with when I was working with them, I actually kept track. My record was losses over wins was 1,724 to 2. I only won twice, and those were both accidents.
Wow.
Those are both accidents where literally I drew. One time I actually drew Exodia. So
Oh my God.
Oh, get got scrub. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
What are the
just-
cards?
yeah, exactly. Just the first time I drew, it was like, okay, well, I'll try to stall for 1 turn, but after the first turn, I'm gonna have to show this because I can't. So
Gotta-
yeah.
Rules demand it.
Well, you just have to. I'm sorry. Even the kid that you're playing against is gonna be like, oh, you were meant to do that.
Yeah.
And you'll see when it comes to my play style as a game master, I play that card a lot. I play the you're going to do something in the future and I'm going to tell you what it's going to be. And then when it happens later in game, it could be 6 months later, you'll remember what I said and go, oh, he knew we would be in this moment. It's just classic.
Don't leak out Game Master secrets now.
Oh, that's part of what I do. You remember I do the Games Mastery series, and which is going to be rolling out a new version in January. But I actually am going through my old ones, and I've just recently set up a reduced price on the season 1, season 2 videos. So for $18, you can get the basics. It's $17 on the site, and I think they may charge tax, but it's $17, and you get 7 lessons and teaches you the basics of being a role play game master. And it doesn't matter which system, Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, it's set up to be kind of open scale that way. But there's 2 different ones of those at $17 a piece. So, and if you direct message us based on this video to gamemarketguru@gmail.com, I will give you a discount on the 2 package, the 2-for-1 package. So
Nice.
Wow. Oh, that's a deal right there.
yeah, so and yeah, normally I charge $40 for one of my sessions, and this is 7 sessions, so it's a heck of a deal.
Wow. That's great.
Okay, now let's go back to that was the how I got into the intro to games, but I want to talk a little bit about how I got into role play games. Throughout school, all the way up until I was 10 or 11 years old, I played all kinds of games at school. Some of them your parents wouldn't want your kids to learn, like Tunk, because it was a gambling game that 10-year-olds played, and it's a fun little game. But you can I racked up, I think in one weekend I racked up $75 in income from the other players.
Wow.
Because it's a barter bidding game where you're dealt a certain number of cards, and the number of cards change every game. So first round you get 1 card, then you get 2 cards, then you get 3 cards, and then you get 4 cards, and you're bidding on how many tricks you're going to take. And the trump is always the suit played by the first player. So if you only have 1 card, you're going to win that one. because you get to play first. So your card is going to be trump. Unless the other guy happens to have an ace, whatever. So it's hierarchy. If you've played any bidding games, you kind of know what I'm talking about. But anyway, it was not a good game for a kid my age to know how to play, because I got high schoolers to give me money and stuff, which is really funny because normally at that age you're getting beat up by the high schoolers. But anyway, so
You must be honorable in your losses.
I was. I ended up losing my lunch money more than once,
And you also don't condone gambling
I
at
don't.
all.
I don't. Not at all. Not at all. Especially not among children. No, absolutely bad. That's exactly why this channel has its little warning about adult content. Is sometimes I'll slip and talk about things that are in the past that got done that shouldn't have been done. That kind of thing. So.
Oh no.
Well, as you were saying about your childhood.
Moving backwards. So, in the late winter of 1973, I was in Colorado at the time. I have to think of things in terms of the year because I moved 40 times before I was 18 and went to 22 different grade schools and 6 different high schools. So I was all over the place. So anyway, we're in Colorado, and at the time I was a member of a war games club. Now, back in those days, war games were mostly chit-based, little tiny squares of cardboard with numbers on them that would represent artillery or infantry or cavalry units, and you would move them around on a map of a certain kind of terrain or whatever. But in that same group, there were also modelists, and they played a game I'll never forget called Mustangs and Messerschmitts.
Ooh.
And in Mustangs and Messerschmitts, you were being the pilot of a 1/72nd scale model airplane.
Ooh.
So you'd have the airplane, and the models were about this long, about that wide on wingspan. And then you would take a copper tube of the same diameter as a paperclip, and you would glue that little tube to the bottom of the wing right near the fuselage. Then you take that paper clip and you'd fold it out twice so that it's just got a long hook, and you'd stick that little paper clip into the tube. So now you've got the airplane suspended on the paper clip. Then you take the paper clip and you attach it to a clothespin by tape or glue to one of the arms, so that when it's closed, it's now holding the airplane on the paper clip. on the clothespin. Then you take that clothespin and you attach it to a rod. The rod was exactly a meter tall, marked off in centimeters. And so you would clip the clothespin onto it. And so now the airplane is held by this copper tube and this little metal thing. So now your airplane is on a stand, but that stand has to be able to move. So you place it on a wheeled base. And the wheeled base had two wheels in the front and one wheel in the back. And the one in the back could be adjusted as far as how much maximum angle that back wheel could turn. And that would be determined by the maneuverability class of the aircraft you were modeling.
Oh.
So now that's one stand. Okay, that's just one stand. Now we would play 20 of us on a side and do entire air battles. As these little carts are chasing each other around on the floor. Because the copper tubing is the same diameter as the pin, you can actually put the plane into a dive and it wouldn't fall off. So you'd actually point the nose down, move it down on the stick to show how much elevation it lost, roll it forward, make its turn, and tilt the wings. So now the model's exactly where it should be at the end of that move. The next guy, because he's behind you, got to determine which direction to turn by your direction of turn. So now he follows his maneuver, and maybe he turned too sharp. So now he's inside of you. But each model is moving on its own thing across this floor. It was a dance. It was a beautiful, highly choreographed, fascinating dance. And they included some people were playing bombers. So they were on double stands. They couldn't move. They just went in a straight line. But they had gun platforms. They had little things that would mark little templates so they knew which direction they could shoot as the airplanes went by.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's what I was thinking I was going to do on this certain Sunday afternoon. And when I get there, they say, oh, the guy with the models can't come today. We're not going to get to play that. Okay, what are we going to do instead? Well, Davey, my buddy says, well, my grandpa Dave's in town and he's got a game he wants to play. he and his friends just designed it. It's going to come out next year. We want to go ahead, if you don't mind, we'd like to play it. I go, sure, whatever. I'm only 11. What do I know? And then they start to describe a role play game. I'm foolish enough. I'm only 11 years old. I've just read The Hobbit. So naturally, I play a character by the name of Bilbo Baggins. And so in 1973, 6 months before it was released, I got to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Wow.
From and it was GM'd by one of the guys that designed the game. My buddy's grandpa Dave was Dave Arneson. And Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax are the two guys that are credited with the design and publication of Dungeons and Dragons. So I have literally been playing nonstop since then, because that very week I fell in love with it, and the following week, with nobody around, I GM'd it for the first time for my sisters.
Wow.
And I didn't know much about the monsters. The funny thing, okay, so I told you that to tell you this part. When we had our encounters during the game, I'm 11. I've got no idea what's going on. I mean, they say, okay, we're camping, and so I they've got we didn't even have any little figures. We were using dice, so I moved my little dice to say my dice was going to go go sleep or whatever. Well, they described that during the night we were being attacked by footpads. Now, everybody else at the table, except for my buddy whose grandfather was dead, the two of us were the only youngsters at the table. Everybody else were 25, 35-year-old guys, which of course we thought were old. But yeah, don't laugh. Don't laugh. You guys think I'm old and I'm not. So there you go.
I didn't think you were that.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Just keep thinking that. When they said footpads, I had no idea what he was talking about. Footpad, as you may know, it was actually the class level name for a second level thief. Back in the original version of Dungeons and Dragons, your characters had level names based on prestige. First level was called a cut purse. Second level was called a footpad. They just went up, talking about the sophistication of the kind of crime you could pull off.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know why they changed that. That sounds cooler.
Okay, but see, the thing is that a lot of what you have now in Dungeons and Dragons is a spin-off off of that. So, for example, right now in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, you can play a wizard, or you can play a sorcerer, or you can play a warlock, as 3 examples. They've got others. They've got witch. They've got a bunch of others. In D&D, 1st edition, sorcerer was a level name for a wizard, for a spellcaster, called a magic user. He wasn't called a wizard. He's called a magic user. A wizard was a level name for a magic user. So when you played a spellcaster, you played a magic user. You didn't pick a particular one, because your level would determine which name you got, because to them the name didn't carry the gravitas that it does now. So now we can say, well, a sorcerer means will in the word, and sorcerer means his magics come from external sources or whatever. Like the warlock is external power source, whereas a sorcerer is messing with the actual nature of the magics or whatever. That's all now described in the player's handbook as describing how the spells are cast. Back then we didn't care. It didn't matter. As a matter of fact, the spell lists were crazy, because the original spell list, you could have climb walls, but you could also have communicate with or speak with animals, and you could have I don't know. But a magic missile was like the biggest spell you could have at 1st level as a spellcaster, as a magic user. And so with all of that, not knowing what a footpad was, I have to say that in that time frame, there was this movement known as the hippies, and you may have heard of hippies.
Never heard of that.
Really? You've never heard of hippies? Yeah. Okay. Nice. The hippie movement was liberty, freedom to do what you want, smoke what you want, eat what you want. Just be you. Just it was very anti-war. It was very don't judge. That was kind of their watchwords. Well, one of the emblems that represented the hippie movement was a barefoot. A barefoot print. The outline and of a slender human foot with the toes all still attached. So it was the full footprint. So just like a handprint, but it was a footprint. But they would make them out of faux fur. And it would be faux long shaggy fur. It was representative culturally of the fact that hippie women did not shave their armpits. Hippie men didn't shave their chests. The hair grew wherever it wanted to grow. So these footprints were indicative of and sort of a humorous slam at the hippie movement. But they were ubiquitous. They were everywhere. You could go into the bubble jars at the bowling alley. You could put your quarter in and spin the thing and get an entire, 4-inch, 5-inch long footprint with the fur in neon orange or neon blue or black or whatever.
Or green.
Lots of strange colors. But it was also tied to similar emblems for the hippie movement were the daisy, the big. Now you think of electric daisy, it's like that.
They were called the flower children.
They were very anti-war, very peace-loving. Why can't we give the world a chance? They were into ecology. The ecology symbol was also another one of these. That green that looks almost like a egg with a line through the middle was called the ecology symbol. You could get ecology flags out of the same machines. But the point is that in my mind, at age 11, when they described us being attacked by these foot pads, I'm thinking the footprints, the hairy footprints that I've seen all over town, that are everywhere. It's like, oh, those are foot pads. That is creepy. Can you imagine if they came down? Because they were sold with sticky back, so you could stick them places to remind people of the hippies. So you'd find them in bathrooms and City Hall on the side of the building or whatever. They would put them almost vandalistically on everything, but they would come right back off. So it wasn't really that dangerous or bad for the environment or whatever. But nonetheless, this was a ubiquitous thing. So in my 11-year-old mind, what I imagined was, okay, so here are the things that I had to work with. They followed us from town. They traveled by night, and they followed our tracks exactly. So I'm thinking these foot pads literally are sneaking along the trail behind us. That's why we didn't see them coming, because they were actually on the ground inside of our footprints, just slowly sneaking towards us. And the final piece of evidence to me that proved it had to be them is that they went for their throats. And I'd just seen Monty Python, the Holy Grail, and the rabbit went for the throats. So yes, these little furry, fairy footprint, get it off of me, kill it. And so no one ever corrected me. Okay, so this is in 73. No one corrected me. So in my own personal games, the only monsters I knew to use were skeletons, because skeletons fought us. Giant spiders, which were the size of small dogs, which still was pretty scary for an 11-year-old, because small dogs are big as I was. There were, footpads and orcs. There were orcs. So those were the 4 monsters I had to work with in my monster manual. That's all I had to work with. So for a year and a half of playing D&D, that's what I had. I had Finally, I moved to another town, and the books had come out, but I didn't own them because at 11 years old, if I had told my dad I needed a book that was costing $15, he'd have told me I was crazy. Which, by the way, that's how much the Player's Handbook cost when it first came out.
15?
Wow.
What happened?
Can we go back in time?
Hey, we remember Coats when they were a nickel.
Yeah, remember we were talking about that earlier. Right. You could buy with what you have to spend to get a sandwich today. You could have had an entire meal and still had change left over. That was exactly the ad campaign that McDonald's used. That for a $5 bill, you could bring your wife and yourself and 2 kids buy lunch for everybody and still get change off of a $5 bill. That was their ad campaign.
Yeah, because you had 39-cent hamburgers.
We gotta go back.
Yeah.
Uh,
Take us
So-
back.
Yeah. So those are my 4 games. So then I went to another town to play D&D, and I hadn't seen the books yet. I was still playing with my. Oh, by the way, notice also something else. Polyhedral dice were used at the table because Dave Arneson brought those with him. I never had any of those. So through the first year and a half I played, I did it with Sixers. So I actually, at age 11, built my own combat grid off of memory of what we played, so that I created a way to hit armor classes 16, 17, 18 by giving you additional dice to roll. So instead of rolling, you would roll 3d6 on every attack instead of just 1 dice, like a 20-sided.
20.
Which meant that your average was more to the middle. So my games tended to be a little bit more violent because I had to make the numbers a little higher because you would hit average way too often. So, but then I went to another town and learned that there was a monster manual, and the players that I picked up schooled me rather hard, and it was the only time that I ever had a what I call a TPW instead of a TPK. It was a total party wipe. They wiped my dungeon. They literally walked in, asked me. They said, "Okay, what kind of mapping are you using?" "Oh, I use graph paper." "Great. So you already got the map drawn out. So let me ask you this: how much is the space how much are your hexes?" "Oh, my hexes are 10 feet." "Okay, so the width of that pencil lead that drew that line that is the wall would have to be less than 4 inches. So I've got an 18 double odd strength. So me and my buddies all have high strength. So we're just going to punch holes in the walls."
Oh my god. Oh wow.
And embarrassed me horribly. I was 11 years old. I was a master, arguably, I was telling them that I'd been a game master for a year and a half, and they were saying, the game's only been out a year, so how can you be a year and a half? But I'd learned it before it was released. I had my own combat charts. They just basically drubbed me bad. And if it hadn't been for the fact that I almost cried at that game session, I probably wouldn't be a game master today, because the one guy out of the entire room was actually a teacher who also played. And he came over and sat down next to me and heard my story and said, "Well, I can't give you the books, but when you're here at the school, you can read my books." And so I was able to read, and because of my eidetic memory, commit to memory every page of the DM's guide and the player's handbook, so that by the next time those guys played, it was a TPK, and it was very intentional. So
Nice.
I served them up extreme unction for their errors. So, but that was, I don't ever count that as one of my TPKs, because this is actually in the pre-Nikos days. I hadn't yet even drawn the map, so it wasn't. This is 75. So, all right. So that's my role play experience on how I got started. We have 15 minutes left, so. Gene, why don't we? I was going to go backwards in this one. Dave, tell me about your first role play experience.
Well, wait, role play is in D&D or actual?
Well, no, role play. I don't. It doesn't matter to me. What did you play first?
Well, I did a role play on Grand Theft Auto. I was a cop. There's a whole an actual interview process to be a real cop in the video game.
It's built in the game?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. See, if you were talking to me from 2 years ago, I would have rolled my eyes at you and said, "Yeah, that's not really role play." But I don't anymore. So that's awesome. So you got
to learn the police codes and everything.
Nice. So you didn't know what a 211 was and 187, all that kind of nonsense.
Yeah, I forgot a lot of it, but I still remember my nickname, or not my nickname, but your officer name. It's D Charlie 297.
Nice. Yeah, it's your identifying code. Usually it's the car.
Yeah, that was really cool. I
Nice.
like that memory.
So from that, then you got the itch to actually play a role in another kind of game. Is that how you got into the other role play games?
No, I I got into roleplay by a game master. I don't know. He's not that popular nowadays.
Oh my
He's done
god.
a little acting on the side.
What
Yeah,
what happened to be? I think I might know this guy. Longish hair,
Possibly.
longish hair
yeah, yeah.
has his own. Well, no, he's not a bad role player. He's actually a really good actor though. So because he acts like a role player sometimes. So.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
I know who we're talking about now. Now I know who we're talking about.
Oh.
Oh, wait. Someone in the chat posted something.
Oh, nice, nice. Well, he should. He should.
Oh, what?
He
Who
really
said
should.
that?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so you can learn a few things.
Well, no, it wouldn't be that. It wouldn't be so much that because I couldn't teach somebody that is that up to it. The only thing I could do is share with him the angst over the fact that the game mechanics had to be such that he had to homebrew his own, which is, I mean, look at me. I never used print materials, so I don't blame him at all.
Yeah, I forgot you run a campaign, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's
Yeah.
we're getting into that. We're gonna get to that, but I need to ask when you got into actual role play. Was it was Mercer?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so you just appreciated what he was doing and tried to find
Yeah.
places to play. That's awesome.
Yeah, my first actual roleplay though was Lovecraftian sort of universe. Yeah, it was the type of world where anytime something terrified you, you had to roll a 100-sided dice and call it low or high, and depending on whether you got it, you took a quirk from that. If you called it right, then you got a positive quirk that usually gave you a +1 attack to your next long rest. You
Nice,
those stacked
nice.
up.
Yep,
Uh,
that's yeah, it's Call of Cthulhu stuff. That's was that canon? Were you running straight out of the book? Do you know, or was it
no,
again?
a lot of it was a little bit of a homebrew thing.
That's cool. Well, see, I don't.
Yeah.
I still balk when I hear the phrase homebrew because to me that is what the games were designed for. Roleplay games, as they stand, Dungeons and Dragons included, were meant to be for the storyteller to tell his own story, however that falls out. And it wasn't until much later that the canonized stories like Faerun and things like that, and most of those actually were spawned by the novels and only happened to get picked up by players. Tracy Hickman and Margaret, the two of them wrote.
Wise,
Yeah, Margaret Weiss.
Wise.
Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman writing the Forgotten Realms stuff was really entrenched into the psyche of players thereafter. But before that, there was Cat's Cradle. You play anything you wanted in terms of role play. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me that your Cthulhu experience was that. What about you? What about you, Fangs? What was your first role play experience?
Um, so it's kind of so I didn't really get to play many like actual like role playing video games until I was older,
Mm-hmm.
but and also so my first like time playing actual D&D was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So and I for a couple times I actually was able to DM a couple.
Oh wow,
So
nice.
yeah.
Nice. Props to you for that. That was okay. So there was a slight
I
period.
wasn't great.
Okay. Well, there was a slight period of time when Margaret Weiss was first writing that there was a big uptick in female game masters, and I think it had to do with the fact that Mists of Avalon, if you're familiar with that book.
Yeah.
Trying to think of the author's name. Gene, help me on that. Who wrote Mists of Avalon? Mists of Avalon.
Right now, it totally escapes me, but it's something I know as a regular author.
Yeah, she was at the time she was like at the foremost of feminism in all kinds of ways. And Mists of Avalon was the story elements were that there was I think the third book in the series was called The Oath of the Renunciates. And the Renunciates were those women that had sworn off relationships with men altogether, wouldn't even talk to men. So I can see her face. I haven't met her, so I feel bad that I don't remember her name. But what I was getting at is that in that period of time there was a big surge in women role players and women game masters. So I applaud you for even making the effort, because that the the table dominance by males has been a thing for a really long time.
There's definitely not enough. I agree with that.
Yeah.
It was fun and everything. I just have never been able to do it again, and I wish I could.
Well, guess what? You happen to know somebody who's a really good teacher of game masters, so it's a
Well,
possibility.
can you teach me?
Hey, yeah, yes, young Padawan. like putty in my hands, you shall be.
So, next question.
Yeah, I got Gene.
Okay, Marion Zimmer Bradley.
Thank you. But when did you first play?
Somewhere shortly after Star Wars, like the first week that Star Wars came out, I saw it, and then some people in mine, they had started they actually were on their second viewing of it, and they were starting up a Star Wars club and invited us all down to the pizza place to do it. And most of them, I guess, had played a bit before and went to a place called the Dragon's Lair in Garden Grove.
Wow.
And from there, the first game I actually played was Traveler.
I say, did your parents immediately have you exorcised of demons? Because that was in that period of time, a place like Dragon's Lair got a lot of negative intention from the media.
76, I was 31 years old. I don't think my parents cared whether I needed to be exorcised from demons. My mother,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
My mother always knew that we were as creative as Hades, and invented our own stories between my sister and myself.
Yeah.
And so, and in fact, she's the one that encouraged us to go down and join the group and find out what it was about.
Alrighty. Well, we're about out of time, so I want to just take a couple minutes and remind everybody about the Extra Life event that's happening this Saturday. I'm going to be playing pretty much most of the time. I'll be